was a rough week for everyone trying to clear the doubles and triples, but despite that, the Globals crowned their overall champions, Tryon saw an electrifying jump-off, and Oslo kicked off the indoor World Cup season in Western Europe. Welcome to Horse Bytes, your 5 and 10, 5-star show jumping, all in 10 minutes. It was a busy one, so let's get right into the highlights. First off, a tremendous amount of prize money was given away with almost 12 million euros in total changing hands this weekend alone. We saw some really varied sport this week between team jumping in Rabat and Tryon, plus a huge difference in spectator crowds between daytime jumping at the Globals, under the lights in Tryon, and in a small traditional indoor in Oslo. Wherever they jumped, however, the sport shined through. The field strengths were also pretty well split, although I'd say Oslo was probably the weakest and youngest overall. Rabat had a really strong group of horses and riders, including world number 1 Henrik von Eckermann in attendance, although Tryon for sure had the best jump-off of all. Arguably, the biggest and most prestigious event of the week was the Globals final in Rabat, Morocco, that gave away over 10.5 million euros in prize money. It was the last chance for people to try and qualify for the Super Grand Prix that will take place in 4 weeks' time in Riyadh, and it was a tour first win for Eduardo Alvarez Aznar and Rockefeller de Pleville Bois Margaux, who won their first ever 5-star Grand Prix at the ripe old age of 19.
Take it home, Rocky. There he comes. Last fence, Edu Aznar and Rockefeller de Pleville. Much faster. They're clear. They've done it.
Unfortunately, however, after a super effort from one of my favorite pairs, Malin Bayard Janssen and H&M Indiana sadly missed out after finishing second on the podium. The women of the Cannes Stars, powered by Iron Dames team, however, took the overall team championship after utterly dominating all season long. Max Kuhner and Christian Kukuk went head-to-head in the Grand Prix for the individual title, but after the penultimate fence fell for Kukuk and his 8-point lead seemed in jeopardy, Max swooped in with the clear to win the bonus of almost 300,000 euros.
Max Kuhner is the Global Tour champion. He is the launching Global champion.
He had to either jump the clear or beat Kukuk's time, so with the pressure on, he managed to do both. An impressive feat given the circumstances. World number 1 Henrik von Eckermann also had a solid week, picking up 2 1.55 wins on his supermare Ileana, taking their 5-star victory count up to 9. All in, the Grand Prix saw most of the faults in the triple and final double. The Belgians particularly struggled with 3 not even completing the triple, and Gilles Thomas' Hermitage Cologne had his first 1.60 meter pole outside of the Olympic Games. The wall was surprisingly spooky, with Manuel Fernandez-Sarro and David Will struggling to get their horses over it, but Philip Weishaupt's round was perhaps the toughest fought all day after he lost his stirrup and reins, regained his composure, completed on the clear, and saw Ludger Beerbaum looking overjoyed and relieved afterwards. It looked like a really good atmosphere, and with the sheer amount of prize money and pressure, it was a big week no matter how you look at it. Despite the dwindling crowd under the lights in North Carolina, Tryon saw some pretty exciting sport. With by far the most electrifying and enjoyable to watch Grand Prix of the weekend.
Well done to Conor Swail. Castellano's looked superb all week.
Conor Swail and Castellano won their first 5-star Grand Prix victory together, adding to Conor's already impressive string of over 30 FEI victories so far this year.
Greyer, Ken Farrington down to the last fence. This is going to be really tight here.
Ken Farrington and Greyer finished second, making it their 4th 5-star 1.60 podium finish together, helping to make Greyer the highest-rated 10-year-old horse in the world. Overall, the class had a strong field of horses and riders, with 16 Olympians and 8 Olympic combinations from Paris. The atmosphere may have been lacking, but with a tight time allowed that caught out McLean Ward, Kat Tyree Flores, and Tyza Erwin, to name a few, the course was challenging enough. Most notable was the Oxer-Oxer vertical triple at the end of the course that tested scope and stamina. Anytime you have a late triple, especially by itself, up against a wall with Oxer-Oxer coming in, you're going to see a lot of faults as horses don't maintain enough power for the early scope test and later balance issues with the vertical coming out. This time, a few got lucky, like Skylar Wireman, who was the first to master the track, but took a huge risk coming in. Unfortunately, the likes of Laura Crouch, Shane Sweetnam, Lily Keenan, and more all fell victim to the difficult combination. David O'Brien and Doug Payne both had rough days and stopped out at the first double and the wall respectively, but the course certainly tested the horses and riders with mistakes all over the place. Harry Charles, who helped his team, the Archers, win the night before, got caught out on the awkward oxer around the blind turn that saw a huge move from Ken Farrington as well, although he managed to clear it. But it was the jump-off where the excitement really happened. All 6 qualifiers jumped clear, and it just kept getting faster and faster. After Kent was seen shaving corners and valuable seconds off Daniel Blumen's time, and Derek Kenny failed to catch him, he seemed unbeatable. But Conor Swail, with his impeccable riding and lightning-fast maneuverability, beat out Kent by just over 0.3 of a second. Not sure if anyone else agrees, but I'd argue Conor is one of the best riders in the world and seems underrated by international standards, something I hope changes one day. All in, Tryon was the best class of the week if you're talking purely sport excitement. Lastly, we saw the first leg of the Western European World Cup League kickoff in Norway. Belgium's Gregory Wathelet and James Bond de Hey won their second World Cup victory together, beating out the other 3 pairs who mastered the difficult first round. It was a bit of an anticlimactic jump-off since the first 2 had faults, and Gregory went for a quick, albeit not lightning-fast jump-off to secure the clear. And with Mons Tyson's horse stalling in the corner on the first rollback, Gregory's victory was assured within just a few seconds of the final round. Edouard Schmitz and Gammon had the fastest time, but after attempting a super short rollback to the vertical that didn't work out, they eventually had to settle for second. Julien Gonin might have had a shot had they done the 5 strides to the penultimate, but with 1 down and a slower time, they finished in third. On the whole, Oslo was a different kind of jumping to Rabat or Tryon, with the latter being contested in large sand rings with plenty of time and space between the fences. Oslo is staged in one of the older, more traditional indoor arenas of Europe. Sure, the crowd is hugely enthusiastic, although not that large as we saw plenty of empty seats in the stands, but with an educated and excited bunch, the atmosphere is always exciting. The ring is small, the jumps come up super fast, the turns are immediate, and there is no time to waste. In fact, the time allowed was super tight as well, catching out Yuri Manser, Geraldine Straumann, and the young Caroline Rehhoff Peterson of Denmark, who was overjoyed by her clear jumping effort despite the 5 time faults. If you remember from last week in Mexico, where the time allowed was 88 seconds, time allowed in Oslo was only 73 seconds, so jumping in a small indoor isn't quite the same game. That being said, however, it was a hell of a course that rode difficultly, with a particularly challenging last line that saw a short bend to a long 3-stride to finish. Harry Allen had a beautiful round but fell victim to that very long 3 when his horse tried to do 3.5 and stumbled through the last. The plank early on caused a lot of trouble, but mostly the final double vertical oxer was the toughest part of the course. It wasn't on a related distance, so riders had to find their own way in, and with a tall vertical at A and an oxer kind of into the wall that backed them off, many fell victim to it. Harry Smulders and Monaco suffered there as well, squashing any hopes of winning a 5-star Grand Prix title that still eludes them, even after crossing the €3 million mark in career winnings for the pair. Most of the main contenders like Steve Gerda, Peter Fredriksson, and Donald Whitaker all had light faults, while Martin Fuchs had the roughest day with lots of faults and eventually retiring. Unfortunately, no native Norwegians or even any Scandinavians made it into the jump-off, but after the Belgians had a particularly difficult day in Rabat, fellow countryman Gregory Wathelet saved the day, picking up the first World Cup win of the season, and now automatically leads in the standings. By and large, the weekend was filled with good show jumping and a clear indication that combinations are causing most of the trouble at the high level. Perhaps it's time for some gymnastics practice. As far as the ratings and comparing field strength, course difficulty, atmosphere, jump-off quality, and overall entertainment, I'd tie Rabat and Tryon on a 7 out of 10, while Oslo was a bit lesser on a 6.2. Well, that's a wrap on this week's top highlights, and stay tuned next week for an indoor showdown between Helsinki and Washington, while 2 more World Cup qualifiers get underway. Stay tuned to all of our socials. Make sure to subscribe and follow along all the action as it unfolds here on Horse Bytes. Your 5 and 10 5-star show jumping all in 10 minutes.